Then those two men assaulted and abused him for an entire day and night. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Even today in China, the mainstream view is still that only girls can be victims of perverts and sexual assault. But that is not the truth. Boys also need to be careful about their safety when out and about. Today we will talk about a shocking case from 2008 to 2012 where Liang Ying and Zhuo lured and kidnapped 5 underage boys. They sexually abused, murdered, and dismembered boys, even cannibalizing parts of the bodies before dumping the remains. Even by today's global standards, the gruesome details of this case would be considered extremely disturbing and perverted. Though attitudes are slowly changing, there is still a long way to go when it comes to awareness about the safety of boys and young men in China. Let me quote some ideas from Li Yunhe. Li Yunhe is a prominent Chinese sociologist and gender scholar. She is one of China's most influential feminists and social activists. Li Yunhe has long been devoted to promoting gender equality and women's rights in China. She once commented, "The biggest issues for gay men in China is that society won't accept them and denies them their rights. Because of old-fashioned Chinese values, most people have negative and intolerant views of homosexuality. They don't recognize that gay men have their own identity and deserve the same rights as anyone else. It's not just that gay men struggle to come out of the closet. They live with inner turmoil and feel oppressed. They also face discrimination and unfair judgment in society." Although the LGBT movement in China has helped raise some awareness recently, the situation is still pretty dismal for gay men overall. Gay men have it really tough in this country. Social attitudes make their lives difficult and cause them a lot of pain. Even though China has modernized so quickly, old prejudices die hard. Gay rights are still a long way off, and gay men have to suffer in silence. Many feel torn between their true selves and what friends and families expected them to be. Lots of people look down on them and see them as outcasts. Progress is slow, but the hard work of activists is starting to open some minds. There's still a long road ahead, though, until gay men in China feel accepted and free from discrimination. Society needs to wake up and provide them the dignity and rights they are entitled to. The case we are discussing today involves gay men who committed disturbing acts, but being gay did not cause their behavior. One was a sexual deviant, and the other developed Stockholm Syndrome, which refers to a psychological condition where hostages develop a positive relationship with their captors during captivity. In short, it means feeling sympathy for one's captors. We should not excuse their crimes because of the discrimination that gay men face. We should not blame the victims, but we should also discourage vigilantism. My apologies, I have gone off on a tangent. Let's go back to the main topic at hand, the details of the case we want to examine today. Quanyang is a city in northern China's Shanxi province. It has the nickname the Communist Party's first baby because the party founded it themselves way back then. On 29th of March 2012, a boy named Yang and his family went to the police station in Yangcheng to report that something terrible had happened. The night before, Yang said 2 strangers had abducted him. They took him to a residential building and dragged him up to the 4th floor. In one of the rooms there, they tied him to a chair and ripped off all his clothes. They forced him into a bath against his will. Then those 2 men assaulted and abused him for an entire day and night. The poor kid had just gone through hell. Well, the viewer interested what they had done to the poor kid, included but not limited to licking genitals, tickling the feet, twisting and biting the victim, picking the victim's anus, etc. He was traumatized by what these creeps did to him. His family were frantic with worry the whole time he was missing. I can't imagine what they went through. They must have been out of their minds when Yang finally made it home and told them about his horrific ordeal. No wonder they rushed straight to the police, so those scumbags could be found and arrested as fast as possible. What kind of a twisted animal would do something like that? Let's kick off the story from Yang's point of view. The next morning after he had been tortured, the younger of the two men went off to work. The older guy was exhausted from what they had done and passed out cold. Yang saw his chance and decided to save himself. In his own words, "They had me tied up all night and my hands were in agony. I somehow managed to wiggle free on my own. I made it out to the balcony where my clothes were. I got dressed and grabbed a bottle of Coke. When I was about to jump out of the window, I couldn't take the Coke with me, so I just choked it and slowly make my way down." Never mind that it was the 4th floor, Yang climbed over the balcony and shimmed down a drain pipe to escape. The second he hit the ground, he heard his legs snapped with a sickening crack. The pain was excruciating, but he was even more scared of the creeps in that room. Limping and stumbling, he made it out to the street and got away from there as fast as he could. The poor kid showed unbelievable courage and quick thinking. His legs were broken, he was still aching and traumatized from his ordeal, but he summoned the strength and determination to free himself rather than wait for those animals to wake up again. No wonder his family was so proud of him, even in the midst of their anguish. Yang was a fighter. He'd been through hell and back, but he didn't give up. Thank goodness he found the will to escape when he did. I hate to think what might have happened otherwise. With Yang leading the way, the police searched the area that night. Remember how Yang said he had tossed a Coke bottle out of the window during his escape? Sure enough, there were shards of glass where it had smashed on the pavement below. Yang felt awful for littering, but there was no going back. While looking for the remains of the bottle, suddenly the young attacker emerged and walked right into the hands of the law. At last, the truth of this twisted spree of homicide and abuse was ready to come to light. Liang Ying was 44, born in 1968, and originally from Yangquan. He was jobless and had done time for child abuse, 4 years in prison until his release in August 2007. Zhuo was 28 years old, born in 1984, and worked for a construction company in Yangquan. He had no criminal background himself, but here's the twist. Yu used to be Liang's protege. Even crazier, Yu was actually one of Liang's victims in that child molestation case years ago. Talk about bizarre! How on earth did this happen? At the police station, in the face of the police's strong interrogation, the two confessed to their crimes without concealment. Not only that, but they also provided information about 6 other major unsolved cases which the police had already filed but not yet solved. We talked about how the life was hard in China when Luo Shubiao was growing up in the 1968. So many were starving with no means to get by. Liang Ying, on the other hand, was fortunate in that while his family was humble, at least he was fed and clothed. But his parents were always fighting, screaming rows that often turned physical violent. As a child, with no one to care for him, Liang Ying became withdrawn, sullen, closed off, and plagued by feelings of weakness and inadequacy. He never reached out to connect with others. In 1988, Liang Ying dropped out of school and stayed at home. He was obsessed with adult books and rarely went out until his father arranged for him to work in an industry. He worked there for 16 years until his arrest in 2004. In the year of 2000, Liang Ying, as a veteran employee in the factory, was arranged to take in Yu Zhuoyang, then only 16 years old, as an apprentice. After a few days, Yu Zhuoyang wanted to leave the factory because Master Liang Ying often molested him unintentionally. This was likely incomprehensible to a teenager boy at the time, so Yu Zhuoyang would characterize it as unintentional. But in reality, for the perpetrator, those acts of sexual harassment were undoubtedly deliberate, escalating and pushing the envelope persistently. However, Yu Zhuoyang always thought of his parents, pleading for him to get a job, and could only choose to endure silently. Liang Ying, seeing this, became more and more presumptuous. One evening, he forcibly had a relationship with Yu Zhuoyang. After the incident, Yu Zhuoyang felt very disgusted and cried bitterly. But as a young man, he felt ashamed to speak out and did not choose to call the police. This allowed Liang Ying to force him to have sex more frequently. Gradually, after Liang Ying's repeated brainwashing, Yu Zhuoyang actually began to enjoy this feeling. Perhaps being subjected to such trauma, he was compelled to fool himself into resignation in order to transfigure the unendurable agony into a life he could somehow consent to live. This homosexual relationship lasted until November 2004, when Liang Ying was caught molesting a boy by others. He refused to settle privately with the other party and was arrested after being reported. Liang Ying was sentenced to 4 years for child molestation. Because in China, the object of rape can only be female, Liang Ying's victim was a boy, so he could only be prosecuted by molestation. After being released from prison in 2007, Liang Ying did not feel repentance due to his 4-year imprisonment. On the contrary, long-term incarceration seemed to have further stimulated his twisted criminal desires and thirst for violence and controlling others in the depth of his heart. A few weeks later, this evil soul regained freedom again and couldn't wait to look for new victims and accomplices. Yu Zhuoyang, the unfortunate young man, developed an illusory dependence on the murderer who deprived him of his humanity and dragged him into darkness through some strange psychological mechanism during prolonged abuse. Trapped in the collapse of personality and confusion of mind, Yu Zhuoyang's habitual dependence and admiration for Liang Ying's distorted affection eventually prompted him to actively become an accomplice in this mad murder. This is undoubtedly a typical example of Stockholm Syndrome. A soul that has suffered long-term mental and physical torment will have a distorted liking or even admiration for its perpetrator, eventually being completely dominated by losing self and moral bottom line, becoming an accomplice to creating chaos and destruction. This is creepy, and it also turned the case into an even more bizarre and terrifying nightmare. The unusual cooperation between the two men undoubtedly pushed this case into a new stage. We don't know what kind of disaster it will ultimately lead to, and Yu Zhuoyang had thus become the most unfortunate and incomprehensible character in this case. On the 17th of February 2008, Liang Ying and Yu Zhuoyang claimed their first victim, 16-year-old Zhao Fei, an innocent school student. Liang Ying lured Zhao Fei into their sinister home under the guise of being a teacher, offering to tutor him after school. Once inside, Zhao Fei sensed the disturbing affection between Liang Ying and Yu Zhuoyang, as well as the evil that filled their dwelling. His violence angered the two inhuman beings. They locked the door and pounced on their prey. Claiming to play an innocent game of poker, they proceeded to bind Zhao Fei and torture him in unimaginable ways for their twisted pleasure. His anguish screams filling their darkness. After days of inflicting unspeakable suffering, they grew bored of their toy. Liang Ying ended Zhao Fei's misery, and they butchered his body to hide their heinous crime. After not hearing Zhao Fei for days, his worried family eventually reported him missing to the police. Zhao Fei's body was discovered in a river by a factory. The tragic news devastated his family. Heartbroken over the loss, Zhao Fei's grandparents and father grieved themselves to death shortly after. Only his mother was left behind, inconsolable, watching her tear-stained face day after day and repeatedly visiting the police station for any news about the case. But this was only the beginning, as more victims would fall prey to their bloodlust. In June 2008, Liang Ying and Zhuo, the two inhuman beings, claimed their second victim. When wandering in the labor market, they tricked a victim Yang, a hard-working young man, into their sinister home with the excuse of helping them move things. A blogger wrote that the victim Yang was their middle school classmate. They said the victim was a kind-hearted boy who brightened the lives of those around him. As with their first case, they played poker only to excuse their cruel intentions. They tortured Yang for days in unimaginable ways, his suffering and anguish feeding the darkness in their twisted souls. Those guys were sick in the head with some serious twisted kind of evil. By the time Yang was barely clinging to life, they finally ended his misery and butchered his body to hide their crime, indulging in their bloodlust without a shred of mercy or remorse. Their chosen target further proved how arbitrary and indiscriminate they were in selecting victims to satiate their thirst for cruelty. They seemed to prey deliberately on those who deserved love and kindness, corrupting all they touched. Between August 2009 and August 2011, 3 more murders were committed by these two inhuman monsters. Liang Ying and Zhuo carefully planned each crime together. Zhuo would drive while Liang Ying wielded a blade. Claiming to rob their victims, they abducted Shi, an underage boy, Bai, another underage boy, and Chen, a third underage boy, holding them captive in Zhuo home. In that house of horrors, they put their victims through days of the worst torture you can imagine. Like they got off on all the pain and misery they dished out. When their depraved thirst for cruelty was finally quenched, they murdered the innocent boys in cold blood, butchering their bodies to conceal the evidence of their heinous acts. Over 4 years, 5 victims went missing. Aside from Zhao Fei's case, where the body was found and determined as murder, the families of the other 4 victims posted missing person notice and reported to the police. At that time, there were various speculations in society. Some thought they had run away from home. Some thought they had been tricked into joining some pyramid schemes. But no one would have suspected them being killed. This was widely discussed on social media at the time, though the police had different reasoning. Except for the victims' families, few paid much attention and the cases were gradually forgotten. The public remained unaware of the darkness that had truly fallen the victims. So why was this case never solved, except for the first case where the victim's body was found? Normally, even the police would not immediately assume a missing boy had encountered violence or been imprisoned. In China's stereotypes, labels like murder and rape were usually attached to females. During the repeated crimes, Liang Ying and Zhuo gradually accumulated a wealth of anti-detection awareness. They deliberately erased traces, making it even more difficult for the police to detect. If it hadn't been for clever Yang, lucky escape, and reporting to the police, there might have been more victims. In small cities like Yangcheng, police resources were limited and many cases went unreported. Boys need to take care of themselves when going out as well. On the 22nd of August 2013, Liang Ying and Zhuo were sentenced to death by the Yangcheng People's Court. The sentence was carried out on the 28th of January 2016. Liang Ying exhibited strong sadistic and controlling tendencies. He seemed to gain psychological satisfaction from dominating and inflicting suffering on others, including his victims. He also showed a lack of empathy or remorse for his heinous acts. Overall, Liang Ying's psychology reflected a dangerous combination of cruelty, manipulation, and callousness. Zhuo appeared to be strongly dependent on and submissive to Liang Ying. He followed Liang Ying's commands and participated in the murders to please him, seeming unable to resist Liang Ying's control and influence. However, Zhuo's willingness to engage in vicious violence also suggests he shared some of Liang Ying's disturbing inclination, even if they were not the driving force for him to commit crimes. Zhuo's psychology reveals themes of weakness, manipulation, and a desire to satisfy his partner's sinister urge. Liang Ying exhibited the psychology of a cold-blooded sadist and controlling manipulator. Their codependent and manipulative relationship, combined with callous disregard for human life, resulted in a dangerous criminal partnership and a series of horrific tragedies. Overall, it was a toxic combination of cruelty, manipulation, dependence, and ruthlessness. The case was over, but during the final interview, Yang's words sent chills through everyone present. I suspect they had accomplices. That night, they thought 2 old men were coming, but then said they weren't coming anymore, that they had drunk too much to come. Yang's suspicion implies there could be other shadowy figures connected to the Sinister case, masked killers hiding in plain sight. The reference to the old man indicates Liang Ying and Zhuo may not have acted alone, and their unknown partners in crime were prepared to participate that night before changing plans at the last moment. This raises frightening questions. Were there other victims of these hidden criminals that went unnoticed? How many more killers like them remain at large, escaping consequences for their evil acts? Each unknown sadistic operation in the darkness represents a potential threat to the innocent. Perhaps Liang Ying and Zhuo were part of a broader network of deviants who shared their twisted interests. They may have bonded over a desire to inflict suffering, trading victims, and collaborating in barbarism. The possibility of organized groups engaging in such depravity is a chilling thought. Overall, Yang's speculative words open the door to deeply unsettling theories about this case. There could be a disturbing criminal underworld beneath the surface of society, enabled and embodied monsters like Liang Ying and Zhuo. The unknown scale of potential accomplices and victims represents an ominous mystery that continues to haunt and unsettle even after the 2 main perpetrators met their own end. For 4 years, 2 psycho killers were kidnapping and murdering 10 teen boys in the small Chinese city of Yangcheng. By the time they were caught, 5 kids had lost their lives in their chilling case. The primary suspects, Liang Ying and Zhuo, lured the boys to their home, where they were tortured, killed, and dismembered. Both exhibited strong sadistic and controlling tendencies, while Zhuo seemed particularly dependent on and unable to resist Liang Ying. Fortunately, one victim, Yang, managed to escape and report to the police, allowing the case to be cracked. However, in a final interview, Yang mentioned that Liang Ying and Zhuo claimed 2 old men were coming away that night of the crime. This raises the frightening possibility that other unknown criminals escaped justice. The unknown number of those still at large, villains and their victims, sends shivers down the spine. Even though Liang Ying and Zhuo were put on trial, sentenced to death, and finally executed, the creepy unknown details of this case still give people the chills, especially with Yang's parting words. Nonetheless, the conclusion of this case finally allowed the citizen of Yangcheng to breathe a sigh of relief. The death of sentences of Liang Ying and Zhuo avenged the 5 youths and brought some comfort to the city. Let's hope no such tragedies will happen again. In summary, this was a bone-chilling case that exposed the dark side of human nature and a sinister corner of society. Let's end the case here and see you in the next one.